Today we're taking a field trip to an amazing bakery to learn how the pro bakers make bread at the highest level. We'll walk through the entire sourdough making bread process from start to finish and talk about each step and why we do it as we go. Then in the next video we'll take everything that we learned from this trip to make our very own sourdough loaf back at the crib. All of this, of course, with the intent of making you a more skilled, thoughtful, and versed baker. I was fortunate enough to link with the head honcho at one of Chicago's, well, honestly more like the country's most beloved bakeries, Publican quality bread.
Looking good, man. Beautiful.
These guys are no joke. They make all sorts of fermented breads, make many a pastry, and sell their goods to some of the country's best restaurants all over the city and beyond. You know that the bread is good when chefs decide to call their bread service Publican quality bread and butter. Greg Wade and his team are the wheat wizards behind the curtain and responsible for putting out some of the best bread I've personally ever had. Today he's going to walk us around the bakery and show us how they do things here at Publican quality bread.
So, let's maybe get some bread in the mixer.
Cool. Where do you get a lot of your flour from?
That's actually a really good question. We're partnered with a farm, it's about 2 hours south here called Spence Farms.
Spence?
Yeah, S-P-E-N-C-E. And they grow us all different types of wheat and rye, and their neighbor grows us oats, and just like others like, you know, Gala and Macintosh apples and stuff like that. Different varieties of wheat. They perform differently, both on the farm and in the bakery, and they taste kind of different. So like we really work closely with the farmer to choose grains that work well on the farm, but then also will work well in the bakery and taste really good.
Yep. As far as like store-bought stuff, do you have a favorite brand?
So honestly, King Arthur's pretty trustworthy for bread flour. Bob's Red Mill also like pretty trustworthy. Anson Mills is becoming more available, I think. The stuff that we use you can order online at janiesmill.com.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So you can get this exact like freshly.
You're gonna get this exact stuff.
On there. Let's go.
Yep. First thing is your starter. Okay. So this thing is about 30 years old. We never use the last of it. You always just feed it more flour and water. The sourdough starter is a combination of bacteria and yeast that both flavor and leaven your bread. So, and you can see that it's actually the best time to use it. It hasn't started to recede yet. You can see a ton of activity on the top, all these bubbles and everything like that. It's great. I know this, you don't know this, but from when I put it in here, it's about doubled in size.
Do you store this anywhere? Like you said, room temp. And what flours are in here?
So this is bread flour and water.
That's it?
Yep. We use what's called a water meter. We say I want this amount of water at this temperature, and then it gives it to you. So how we control fermentation, really high fermentation control, time and temperature. We want our bread to be coming out between 80 and 82 Fahrenheit. What we do is have the bakers take the temperature of the flour, the room, the starter, everything that goes into the bread. We put it through an equation to calculate our water temperature, which also accounts for the amount of heat added through friction.
Wow.
We're going to do our initial mix here. The starter goes in. We're going to go into what's called the auto-lease process. Some bakers like to do the auto-lease with starter. Some bakers like to do it without starter. We do it with. So auto-lease, what's happening is your flour is absorbing water and allowing 2 of the proteins in wheat to commingle and create gluten. Also by doing this, you're going to have an overall shorter mixing time. By that I mean, like, obviously we're letting it rest for half an hour, so active mixing time, which is good. So something that you should notice, we didn't put salt in this thing yet. Salt does more than season your bread. It regulates your fermentation rate, but salt also strengthens the ionic bonds between gluten chains. If you add it right at the beginning, you've got those short chains that I showed you, right? We folded the dough and snapped right away. Your salt is going to take those chains and lock those up right away. So we want the dough and the flour to do what it needs to do through the auto-lease process, create these long chains, and then add your salt, which locks up the long chains.
Gotcha.
Let's take a look at.
This has been auto-lease.
This has been auto-leasing. So now when I pull at it.
Oh man, look at that difference, huh?
You see how different that is?
Yeah, totally.
That's what I'm talking about. So you let the flour do what it needs to do, you get these long gluten chains. You want to pull at it real quick for me? Good? Cool. So you feel what that feels like?
Yeah.
Cool. Put it back. So now.
Stretchy.
so it's barely in there. Now grab at it. Feel how strong it is to like when you pull at it, how much it like pulls back
Yeah,
down.
totally.
That's what I'm talking about. So this is now entering bulk fermentation. So bulk fermentation, this is where you get all of your character for your dough. It's where you'll get a lot of life and activity, but also where you get a lot of flavor and workability and extensibility for your dough.
Do you want to just room temperature, like
room temperature, but like not like cold room temperature. Like if I'm
not Chicago winter room temperature?
Yeah, like if I'm just relaxing at home, like my room temperature is probably 68 because I like it cold.
Me too.
For bread, I usually want it about like 75 in here.
Wow.
So here's our dough. This has been fermenting for about 4 hours now. So from what you just saw, 4 hours.
It looks like.
This is what it looks like. So you can feel it. It's got a ton of air in it. It's really lively. Again, like through your time and temperature. So like for us, 4 hours at like 80, 82 for your dough temp gets us here. If you're if you're really cold on your dough temp, then you gotta go a lot longer.
A lot longer, probably.
Could be 6 hours, could be 8 hours. Like at that point you're gonna have to feel it.
Wow.
Right.
Dude. I don't know why that's funny to me. Oh, she's gassy.
So now what we're doing is called dividing and pre-shaping. Now the reason that we do this is you will always get a tighter loaf of bread if you pre-shape it first. So what we do is we divide it, we round it so that it's tight. What we do is, normally when you're dividing, you've got like one larger piece of dough and then you got little snipply bits to like make it up to the size that you need. Round it into one piece, and that's gonna give you an even starting shape, okay? So the more even that you start with, the more even that you're gonna end with. And then also, if you notice when you press on it, it's got a lot of spring to it. The tighter that you shape a loaf of bread, the more gas it's gonna trap. So you form it very tightly, and then you let it relax a little bit, and then you go and what's called final shape it. From there, you let it rise one last time in the fridge before you bake it. So you take a loaf of bread, you're gonna go up, and turn your scraper, come straight back down.
Okay.
Okay. When you put bread in front of it, you go up, you see how it clings to the table and rotates. I go in, I come back down. Support with your other hand. You go up. Good.
Good stuff?
Good stuff.
Oh, no.
And now, we're gonna let that rest. So you can see that they've settled out a little bit. They spread.
Yeah.
And then when you press on it, that tensile strength just kind of relax a little bit.
Relaxed and jiggly and nice and supple.
So and then when you're dusting your basket, you just kind of make sure that you get nice and even. If you're able to shape it tightly, you really don't need all that much flour. And the more tensile strength, the less it's going to stick to the basket. A couple different ways to shape. The easiest one is you're just going to take the whole thing and you're going to just round it. So that's really it. And then what you do, you take the whole thing, squeeze, and let it settle out.
That's literally what you do. Dude, I've never seen one that's insane.
So you can just do that.
Even the most simple ones are never that simple.
He just rounds it and then seals it like that. What I have our bakers do is
There's the PQB method.
this left. So you really want to kind of like pull it a little bit. So you pull and go up, and then you pull and go down.
And that's your crate.
And then you take the tail here, and then you're just tucking and rolling, applying strength back into the bread. Sides come just in, I tuck against the table there. More real time. And you just store them like this.
Greg, are Are we scoring and plopping?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Yeah, good. So here's what our bread looks like in the basket. You can feel it. It's you know, you can feel like it's got a lot of air in it, but it's also still springing back. So this is really good. If you're pressing on it and your fingerprint just stays there, you're likely overproofed. If you press on it and it's like you don't really feel any air inside of it, then you're under. And again, we use these baskets to support it through the proof process. This comes straight from the fridge. So yeah, we mixed it yesterday. We fermented it all day, shaped it, and then let it rot overnight in the fridge. One tool that we use is called a lom.
A lamb?
Lamb.
I've been calling it a lamb.
No, it's lom.
Is that the Chicago accent? It's a lamb.
No, it's a lom.
Okay,
Yeah, it's
okay.
spelled L-A-M-E. It's a double-sided razor. I got a friend who's a woodworker, so he makes me these tools.
Yeah, yours is nice.
Chefs always have like nice knives. You know, bakers are like, got this at like Sonoma.
It's like the beginning of a dope wand.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Call me the wheat wizard. Take a bread off the loader here. If you feel like it's very tacky, what you can do is dust it with a little semolina, or if you're at home and you're baking it in a Dutch oven, you can like unload it onto parchment. You know, really pour your bread onto the parchment.
Gotcha.
And then score it, and then have some wings and like let it like lower or drop into the thing.
The wing. It's the wing approach. Okay.
Wing approach.
You said semolina as opposed to all-purpose. Why?
Yeah, so semolina is porous.
Right.
So you put that on there, only so much is gonna stick, the rest of it falls off.
Ah,
Yeah.
huge. Okay.
Yeah. You can also use cornmeal.
And does rice flour work?
So rice flour is used for lime capacity.
Okay, well, why is that specific?
Rice flour takes a long time to absorb water, so it's a good barrier between your bread and a basket. It stays dry for a long time.
Okay.
We use a blend of rice and AP for lime baskets.
Gotcha.
Yeah. At least for the basket. Anytime you need to handle your bread, you want to make sure that you're like doing it gently.
These are like little babies. Each
Well,
one's little babies.
the thing is, like, you're spending all your time yesterday trying to get air in these things. So, like, if you're handling it difficult, you know, or rough, you're going to be degassing it. It's not what you want.
You're not degassed the bee.
So now we're going to cut these things. What we're doing is, anytime that you're shaping a loaf of bread, you're automatically going to have a weak point in the gluten structure. If you don't score it, what's going to happen? Your bread is going to find that weak point and it's going to burst there. So by cutting it, you're creating an intentional weak point.
Control the burst.
Control the burst. And then what you're also doing is creating more surface area for it to open up fully. So you're going to get a lighter loaf of bread. And then the way that you score a batard like this, you got boules and batards. Boules are round, batards are oblong. When you score a batard, normally what you're going to do is come at it at about a 22.5-degree angle, same angle that you usually sharpen a knife at, and you go maybe a quarter inch deep. It's about the depth of the stick. What's going to happen? You're going to go in, and you're going to cut. Because of the way that this is shaped, the blade is, the curve is going to push the bottom part down while picking that top part up a little bit.
Oh.
So you got a lot of gas going up and out. So if you got this shelf, what's going to happen? It's going to go like this.
Whoa.
That's how you get your ear.
Okay. It's like
Yeah.
tectonic plate vibe.
Right. So like if you cut straight up and down, what's going to happen? You're going to go like this. If you cut too deep though, this is going to be too heavy. So if you cut too deep, it's going to try to do it, and it's going to collapse. It's not going to open up very nice.
So a lot of it's for beauty, but obviously there's function behind it too.
Form and function. So, when we're cutting these things, use the blade for what it is. It's not serrated, right? So, like, going like this is not going to help. You're going to go in with the point, and then just pull straight back.
All the from edge to edge, end to end?
Yeah, end to end. It's really important. Like, otherwise you end up with like a Mickey Mouse foot.
Yeah.
So you got like this is wide, end to end. Okay. You want to keep your blade at that 22-degree angle. So you just go straight in and you pull back. So your motion is with your shoulder. You know, you're keeping your wrist locked, keeping your elbow locked. You're just pulling straight back. So all you got to do, in, pull straight back. So you can go.
Oh yeah, you're like.
Okay.
It's all making sense why it's curved like that.
Okay.
Sure.
Nailed it.
No, I didn't. Alright, let me get her done.
Cool. Better.
Cool.
It's going to be very similar to baking in a Dutch oven or the Challenger pan. The point is, you know, like those pans try to mimic what we've got going on here. Okay, and so the bread goes in, and then the decks are stone, so they retain a lot of heat. They retain a lot of heat. And then loads it, and then you'll notice down here you'll see steam, but we inject it with steam. The pans are trying to capture the steam baked off from the loaf. So like, you know, you make a wet loaf of sourdough, it hits the hot pan, steam happens, and then the pan tries to contain it. Pretty good.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Definitely dark, but not like burnt. I like, you know, this gonna taste like burnt marshmallows. It's gonna be delicious.
Yeah.
But you also like to see the, I think these overlapping bubbles here, like the blisters and everything. That means you got really good fermentation. What this is an indicator of a long fermentation. The longer fermentation allows carbon dioxide, which is the gas that's given off through your fermentation. It allows carbon dioxide, like gas bubbles, to get directly underneath the crust like that. Long fermentation. So once you hit it with steam, it just kind of blisters like this.
So this is the sign of like good, well-fermented bread.
Yeah. Good soup? No.
As Greg mentioned, there are many ways to get where you want to go. This is how this professional bakery does its sourdough. There are other options and other ways to do things as well, but I think the principles that Greg showed us in this video stand true for pretty much most sourdough that you're going to be baking, so I hope it was helpful. That was fun. Huge shout out to Greg and all those guys over at Publican Quality Bread, the entire team. Thanks for letting us in your bakery and poking around. We learned a lot. It was a lot of fun. If you're ever in Chicago, you gotta check this place out. The bread's amazing. The coffee's great too. Greg's a great guy, so if you go, tell him I sent you. Alright, so I mentioned it before, but in the next video, we are going to take all of that information that we took from this video and we're going to apply it to make our own sourdough loaf here at the house. So if that sort of thing interests you, I will see you over in the next video. Until then, take care.